This year I have spent 4 days in London for $130, a full week in Rome for that same price, 3 days in Budapest for $65, and that is only the tip of the iceberg. Last summer I went on an incredible, almost month-long trip through Spain and France for $330. And the question I get asked most often is how. Oh, and these numbers, they include everything. I mean flights, airport transfers, accommodation, food, transportation, and attractions. Seems impossible? Well, in this video, I want to lay out the case that traveling is truly accessible to everyone if only you're willing to mess around a little. Every trip has 3 main budget drainers: transportation, accommodation, and food. There's also attractions, which I mentioned briefly, but if you manage to do all of these cheaply, you'll become a master at frugal travel. Before we begin though, I need you to know that there is nothing free in life. Everything has its price. If it's not money, then it's probably time, energy, or comfort, or convenience. Either way, I myself am more than willing to sacrifice some leg space or a private room, not only to save money while traveling, but also because I truly believe that frugal traveling is the best way to truly experience a place and its culture to the fullest. Okay, but let's talk about actionable tips that I can give you for you to travel for really cheap. Now, some of these tips might feel a little bit obvious, but trust me, most of the people just completely don't do these things, even though they are so simple. I will give you cheap, cheaper, and free options for satisfying your basic needs while traveling, and at the end of the video, I'll tell you exactly how I traveled through half of Europe for less than 1/10 of New York City's average rent. Crazy. First things first, transportation. This is probably the main budget drainer for most, even though it really shouldn't be. It only requires some flexibility to find insanely cheap travel options. Here, let me show you how you can find really cheap flights. Open your browser in incognito mode, go to Skyscanner, type in where you want to fly from, select everywhere as your destination, choose cheapest month as your date, and boom, there you go. As easy as ABC, you just need some flexibility. If you want to fly on a specific date or to a specific location, you need to be prepared to pay just a little more. But if you don't really care where or when you fly, you just want to go somewhere, you can really cross Europe for the price of one night out. There is a little bit more to this topic, but I don't want this to become the main theme of this video. So if you want me to make a separate video all about flight searching, leave a comment down below. Okay, so that's transportation, right? No. Hell no. And I really want to get this across. I really do, because way too many people believe that there is only one option to get to a remote destination: flying. It is not the only option, trust me. There are so many other ways. You can just go to rometorio.com, enter 2 places, and it will list probably about 10 ways you can get from one place to another. My point is, if you're really serious about this, and if you really want to get into the cheap travel niche, you have to explore different options than flying, even if there are cheap flights. First of all, you could try going on a bike trip, okay? It's an incredible experience, I highly recommend it. You can also try hitchhiking, and if you're not comfortable enough with letting a stranger lift you from one place to another, at least a BlaBlaCar. There are also trains and buses, there's so many alternatives. The thing that I want to get across is that you can really eliminate the high costs of transportation almost whatsoever. Heck, I even know a guy who crossed Africa on a scooter. And the best thing is, it's not only cheaper, but also just a boring commute that would have been before, now turns into an adventure in and of itself. And that's why I would highly recommend it. Okay, but there is still the topic of how you'll get around once you get to your destination. And here I have a really simple rule of thumb: rent bikes. Either city bikes or just private rental bikes, but either way, bikes are by far the best way to see any city or pretty much any destination that you're going to. Why? Well, first of all, they're insanely cheap, especially compared to other options. Second of all, the perspective from a bike is way better than from a sidewalk or even from, you know, an underground, which is pretty obvious. Now, that is not to say that you should skip public transportation whatsoever, because it's also a good option, and sometimes it's even an experience in and of itself. But biking to me is the purest form of seeing the city because it's fast, you can get everywhere pretty quickly, sometimes even the quickest of all options, but also it's just fun. Okay, we've got transportation covered, let's talk about accommodation. I'm gonna try to be quick. There are two insanely cheap ways that you can find a place to sleep while you're traveling. The first one is not only cheap, but it's also truly amazing: couchsurfing. Now, for those of you that don't know what couchsurfing is, it's essentially a matchmaking app that allows people to be hosted by strangers while traveling. But please note that this is not an app for free hotel accommodation, whatever, all right? The main purpose of this app is for you to get to know other people, to exchange ideas, to exchange stories, to experience cultures, and the same is what makes people want to host others. So be aware that it might take some effort for you to be accepted by someone into their home, but that's only because you need to be a quote-unquote interesting person and have something to bring to the table, because after all, there are hosting you for free. Then there are hostels, and you want to know how to find a cheap hostel? Well, let's go right into it. Go to hostelworld.com, preferably in an incognito tab, insert your destination and travel date, sort the price, and bam, there you go. Find the best value for money hostel and then go to their own website so that you can book directly and avoid service fees that are, being booked by these various services like Hostelworld itself. But also, if you're traveling with a group of friends, you might find an Airbnb that's very cheap for one person. So just explore other options as well. Just remember, sort by price. That's pretty much the entire tip here. But if you really want to be frugal, you can always camp almost anywhere for free. The best night that I had in my entire life was when I was sleeping on a beach on Mallorca, because it was so picturesque and tranquil, and just when you wake up in such a beautiful place, camping, the best feeling in the world. That's all you need to know about accommodation. Just avoid hotels unless you find a really good deal, and that's pretty much it. Let's move on to the next thing. Food. Okay, this is very simple, honestly. Just avoid fancy restaurants and other tourist traps or places that pretend to serve local food but don't really. Instead, go to a grocery store and buy some bread and ham, make sandwiches.
Those are typical food. Baguettes with some everything.
I mean, why do people not make their own food while traveling? Like, where did we go wrong on that? You'll save tons of money. But if you want to eat some local authentic food, as you should, by the way, then just find a place where local, ordinary people eat. Oftentimes, it will feel completely tacky. It will be rugged, nothing fancy at all. But if you feel that there is hustle, there is energy, and most importantly, just locals mingling there, then it's probably a good spot serving scrumptious food. But if you want to know a free way to get food while you're traveling, I haven't tried it myself, but I have friends who did. It's dumpster diving. 40 to 50% of all food globally is being thrown away the day it crosses the best before date. And we all know that these products don't really go bad, at least not all of them, right on the date it says on the package. So if you really want to save some money, you can go dumpster diving. My friend, who has been in Norway for a long time, he's been doing this all the time. He's strong and healthy, and some of the finds he had were absolutely incredible. The only payment needed here, you need to let go of your ego. We've covered transportation, accommodation, and food, so there's only one thing left: what you will be doing during your stay. Very often, tourist attractions are incredibly expensive, so generally I would just suggest to avoid them. Just go and look at them from the outside. Instead, go to TikTok. God, I really can't believe I'm saying this, but go to TikTok, type in niche cool things to do in your destination, and you will find tons of very interesting things. Or even better, ask your newly met couchsurfing friends, or just honestly, an interesting looking stranger in the destination that you're in, because very often the things that will happen once you do the things that are recommended by locals or by your couchsurfing friends, they will be way interesting than riding to the top of the London Eye or Eiffel Tower or whatever. So these are my best tips for frugal traveling, but before you leave, I left the best for the end. There's one more trip that I think is the best of them all, and I've never heard anyone talk about it. This is the exact thing that helped me and my friends travel through half of Europe for almost a month for as little as $330. That's insane. And the tip is asking for help. To do that, you do need to leave your ego behind. You do need to have the courage to knock on someone's door and ask them for help. And that's exactly what we did. We literally found accommodation by knocking on people's doors and asking if they were willing to lend us a piece of their land so that we could set up our tent for the night in exchange for cool stories and interactions and just getting to know us, the travelers who are crossing half of Europe by bikes. And guess what? These people not only gave us accommodation, but they also fed us incredibly well. They gave us a way to shower, which was the most valuable thing during our trip. And sometimes they even gave us money, which helped us save money throughout the entirety of the trip. But this is not the only way you can do this. If you even are willing to go further than that, you can just ask your friends and family for help. Sometimes you will have good people around you who are willing to support the things that you want to do. The only thing you need to do is ask. This is still a way to travel cheaply, especially if you don't have the money yourself to do this. But trust me, you don't need a lot of it. There you go, I just gave away all my best travel secrets, so please just don't bother me in person anymore, okay? Just kidding. If you have any questions, make sure to pop them in the comments down below and I will try to answer all of them as well as I can. And in exchange for all these great tips that I gave you, maybe a like would be acceptable, or I don't know, maybe you should even consider subscribing for more content like that. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. See you in the next one. Bye bye.